Many know the story of the Battle of the Alamo between Texans and Mexicans in 1836. A few dozen patriots, from Davy Crockett to Jim Bowie, fended off thousands of Mexican soldiers for almost 2 weeks. And right now in San Antonio, Scott Thuman reports there's a Texas-sized fight over one key landmark from that battle.
Today's Alamo, one of America's most recognizable sites that draws more visitors to Texas than any other, was first brought to life for many in stories and on movie screens. The battle, in which a small number of Texans held off overwhelming forces of the Mexican army for 13 days before being overrun, came to symbolize resistance and independence. It is now again the center of another fight, this time between Texans with very different visions.
You are a March 5th guy.
March 5th,
Tell me what that
1836.
means.
That means I would like it as close to the day before the battle, what it looked like, as possible.
Forrest Bias is an Alamo descendant. His great-great-great-grandfather's name of Andrew Kent is prominent on the cenotaph, a monument to the fallen, now about 20 yards from another type of attraction.
It's one of the most, if not the most important archaeological and historical compound here in the United States.
If you're having a hard time hearing Forrest, that's because just across the street is what he's up against.
What is it that stands out to you the most here?
Well, the business over here, they'll get loud at different times. You'll have trucks, you'll have people cruising at night. People don't know they're driving on the battlefield.
For a lot of people, this is kind of a double-edged sword because they were happy to see a lot of the commercial businesses come in here because it meant more people, more money to an area that they wanted to attract people to. The problem, other people argue, is that it's also become an eyesore.
So, a new perspective, a reimagining of what it could be if the state has its way.
It's a ball that we believe was actually fired at the Alamo.
In Austin, deep in a secure room in the state's archives, maps and artifacts.
So we're in Texas, I have to show you a gun.
And upstairs, State Land Commissioner George P. Bush, grandson of George H.W. Bush, is spearheading the redevelopment. What is your vision for how this needs to play out?
This is the most visited site in the state of Texas, and this is all about communicating the timeless virtue of what the cost of liberty is, and that's, in some instances, death to the final battle. And that's what the revolutionaries reflected. That's the story we're trying to tell. And, you know, I'm willing to spend political capital on this.
The commissioner's plan is to move the monument, the stores, close the street, and build a museum. The goal is to go from this to something more like this. The serenity of Gettysburg.
I recognize that George P. Bush comes from a political dynasty, and I'm just one little person out here, but I feel that my voice will prevail.
Lee Spencer White is also a descendant. Her great-great-great-grandfather, Gordon C. Jennings, was the oldest Alamo defender, she says. His name is also etched here.
Yeah, why does it bother you so much, the idea of putting it on the other side over there?
We're surrounded by bistro tables, bars, barkers, street preachers. No, who wants their family headstone there? You want the headstone and the empty tomb right here where they bled and died.
1,377 people are documented that are buried in front of the Alamo, and nobody knows it.
Ramon Vasquez represents Native Americans in San Antonio. He says the Alamo isn't just a battlefield, it's also an important burial site that has to be researched and taken into consideration before a single stone is moved.
We can't ignore what we know. And I think that that's what we're trying to do here by, ignoring the fact that there's a cemetery there, and just hope, cross our fingers that we don't come across any remains and that nobody files any injunctions or anything like that on the project, and we'll just move forward knowing that this exists.
He calls it discrimination.
The only thing I can come up with is that because it's nothing but dead Indians and Mexicans that are buried there, is why it hasn't been protected.
In the place where the original line in the sand was said to have been drawn, there is some agreement. Just about everyone says this site does deserve better. They just can't come to terms with exactly how best we remember the Alamo. For Full Measure, I'm Scott Thuman in San Antonio.